Good morning. This is the start of an exploration of half moon. Although today we are not going to be doing half moon. Today we're going to be doing a whole bunch of pre-stuff to half moon. The thing about half moon in the practice of yoga is it has a really crappy reputation. For a long time, even about 5 years ago, there was a lot running around about how half moon is not possible for the human population. And really people should not be doing it at all. And I do not go with that opinion. I think it is very possible. The trick is you got to be aware. You have to be attentive to what the heck is going on between your ribs, your pelvis, and your leg. And if you're just busting out poses, then yes, half moon is going to be really challenging because most people are limited through their hips. It's one of the reasons why there's so many freaking injuries in yoga, is because there is such a lack of awareness of people's hips plus other parts of their body. So what we need to do first is we need to grow the awareness and the attentiveness, because a lot of it really, I don't think it's about strength. I don't really think it's about mobility. Yeah, those things can improve. The thing is, it's about attention and awareness and really taking that time to grow it and not being afraid of what you actually find out in the process. And you might find out that you actually are very limited, and if you can, be okay with it, because the thing is that we're all plastic. We can all change. All change. All tissue can change. Yeah? So be okay with it, if I can say it that way. All right, so let's get rolling. We're going to be mostly on the floor today, but we're going to be playing around with our ribs. We're going to be playing around with the pelvis and the legs. I think you're going to feel really good through the legs and the hips and the ribs when we're all done with this, but we'll see. You can comment below when we're all done, okay? So all you need today, only prop, is some form of a roller. It doesn't have to be the full long one. It could be a half. We're just going to be rolling about. Okay, so let's begin on the floor and on your back. Okay, so here you are, here, leg bone, pelvis, torso. Okay, ribs are here. And this might sound kind of goofy, but I want you to actually pay attention to okay, here are my legs, here's my pelvis, here's my torso, my ribs, here's my shoulder. Like, get a feel of where these pieces are. Because sometimes we think we know where they are, but when it actually comes to a somatic, kinesthetic feel, we're actually not really clued into it all. Yeah. And then we're going to take this leg up toward our belly. And so what I want you to pay attention to here is, do you want to roll your pelvis as you do that movement? So let me grab the pelvis here. Do you want your pelvis just to go straight into that position? Right? So we're not keeping the pelvis locked in this position. There will be a little bit of movement, but the typical thing is when people bring this leg towards their belly, there's a version of that happens, right? And so it's thinking about the leg bone moving in the pelvis. And then also watch to see, does your rib cage want to move? So whatever position you're starting in here is the position I want you to remain in as much as you can. So it's that leg bone moving in the pelvis. Yeah? Leg bone moving in the pelvis. Be aware of that, and then be aware of the other side. Yeah? Okay, now I want you to take this leg up. You're going to prick the hand just around this part of the thigh, and you're going to press that knee into your arm or into your hand. So the movement is isometric, which means that the angle here between your leg and your pelvis is not moving a whole bunch. You can't see a really perceptible change, but the movement is that. My arm is just being a wall as I press my leg into my hand to my leg. But I'm not bracing through here. I'm not gripping through my jaw. I'm just engaging through my hip flexor. That's it. Good. And yes, it's okay to engage in through your hip flexors. I know I talk a lot about not engaging your hip flexors, but it's the movements that I'm very focused on, that movements that hip flexors tend to compensate for, that we don't want them to be highly active in. And so it's just retraining brain and body of how that movement happens. Yeah? So while you're doing this, just as an aside, we're going to just do this back and forth. I don't want you to feel anything in your back, nothing through your sacrum or your SI. I just want you to breathe easy. Like, don't make this more than it has to be. And on that note, something I just want to mention, I was running the Solutions for Sciatica workshop yesterday, and I made a comment that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is, why don't we make this whole getting out of pain thing fun? Like, would that not be novel? Like, we take things so darn seriously. And I get why. I mean, it's serious business. Don't get me wrong. Like, you've been in persistent pain for a long time. It sucks. I get it. I remember my early 20s when I had the exact same thing. I work with people all the time. I know that it's a struggle sometimes. But just think about that for a moment. Like, what happens if we made this whole biomechanical exploration fun? Well, I mean, I kind of hope I make it fun. But just imagine if we made this kind of like, wow, look, I don't move. I move like shit. Holy crap, my hip flexor are doing this, and oh my God, I'm bracing, and oh my God, but like, instead of like, oh my God, I suck, right? Or I'm like, you see where I'm going? Like, I'm wondering, because we don't hear anybody talking like that, right? It's so serious, and you're really kind of screwed up. I almost said effed up, but like, there's this sort of feeling in the air of like, if you can't get this right, you're screwed. And that's not true. Like, there's not one iota of truth in that at all. At all. And so I'm just playing around with this idea of, how about we make getting out of pain fun? Maybe it doesn't have to be such a burden to become aware. So now I'm coming into butterfly. And what we're doing, like, I'm going to go with this angle. I don't want to completely show you as my legs come apart. But the idea is you're taking your legs wide into rotation, right? And you'll notice my feet. My feet aren't sliding in. My feet are staying where they are. The articulating joint is the leg bone and the hip socket. And you're just coming onto the outside of the foot. Yeah. I also completely know and appreciate, on all levels, my own personal experience, as well as the multitudes of people that I help each day, is that sometimes stuff bubbles up, right? When we start to move better, there's experiences that bubble up. Like, people that I know who were abused when they were kids, and parents said horrible things to them as kids, and they interpreted all that stuff as they interpreted it. They lived it the way they lived it. It was bruising to them. It was like, there's shit happens, right? Like, horrible stuff happens. And as we embody, and as we kind of reconnect to ourselves, and as we come back more grounded, some of that stuff we've got to process. Yeah? We totally have to process it. But again, I'm just wondering if, in the seriousness of some of the shit that goes down with ourselves, if there's this undercurrent that can be fun. I'm just wondering this, right? Because I think we can. I think if we know about cancer recovery, we know about how that we can, when people are watching, who's that, Patch Adams, that physician who made things fun? And I don't mean, like, I'm not like that kind of fun. I'm not a Patch Adams kind of fun. But I'll stop talking now. I'm just going to let that sit. It's something, obviously, you can tell that I've been mulling about. And I'm sorting it out in my head about what this really is about. Yeah? Because if at the end of this, you want to be out of pain and feel like life is fun, you're not going to feel fun unless you practice fun along the way. Right? Just like yesterday when I said, if you want to have ease, practice in ease. If you want tension, practice in tension. Yeah? Anyway, I'll leave that one for now. Let's come back to the legs. I went to the outside of the feet. And then as you're moving here, the key is that your leg bone's moving in your pelvis, and this whole area above is just super, super easy. Easy, easy, easy breathing. Yeah? And just be conscientious of what your actual available range is. Yeah? And so some people, what they find is they can do the range, they can come all the way down through here, but then their heels splay inward, or their back starts to arch, or something happens. And what I really want to emphasize is that might be an available range, but it's not an available range that's actually very functional. So can you just find the range that actually is workable for you, that you feel good in, and then be there. And the next question you might ask me is, well, then how do I get to the next part? And I'm like, just practice in the range that you have. Your body will respond, and it will then naturally move there. You don't have to force and push your body to get to the range you want. Right? That might sound crazy. I need you to trust me on that one. Like, almost humor me and stay within the range that is actually available to you. So use your attention And then watch what bubbles up. Like watch the other thoughts that bubble up of like, oh my God, I've got to push harder. This is never going to work, blah, blah, blah. Like whatever is there, all of those, the blah, 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 the other things, all of that's very real. And I want you to pay attention to that because that is related to all of this. Yeah. So be aware of all that bubbles up, sensations, thoughts, movement patterns, the stuff you say to yourself, the stuff you're saying about me, all of that's very real. Okay, coming on back up. Now take a moment and just notice leg bones, pelvis, rib cage, breathing. Just be aware, okay? Now we're going to bring this leg up here. Take the hand back to the thigh. Press that thigh into the hand. Now as you're doing this, pay attention to this other leg. So this is my right leg. The other one's my left. Pay attention to the left. And is the left one bracing down in order for you to go into hip flexion? This movement is very low load. More load than on the other one, but it's very low load. You don't need the other side pushing down in order to press this one in. So just allow your hip flexor to do the work here. Good. And then other side here and bring that in. Okay, so now from here, you're going to take this leg up, and now I've got the hand here just so you've got some support. You're not moving from the knee. The knee and the foot are along for the ride. The articulating joint is down in through the leg bone in the hip socket. Your pelvis is not sliding about, and you don't need to brace with your belly in order to hold everything tight. I want you just to let your belly be your belly. Like you're lying back here, your belly is your belly. The leg comes up. The likelihood of your belly responding with some engagement is pretty high. But you're not. What I'd rather you not do, unless you have to do it because you have a spondylolisthesis or you've got something else there, is I'd rather you not brace first and then lift. I'd rather you let your abdomen respond to the change of load, right? So just allow for your body to train to be responsive as opposed to braced. Just a food for thought, okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm just rotating that leg bone in the pelvis. Pelvis is staying quiet. Okay, good. And then the ankle comes onto the leg, and let's do a little bit of motion there. Front of the hip, as the leg moves away, front of the hip is not, this hip flexor is not engaging. We're not pistoning the leg away. We're rotating it with the butt, with your rotators. Okay, so now that you're here, this might get a little bit tricky, but let's give it a shot. You're going to start to move into a twist. Now this pelvis is going to come up. The rib cage you can see is coming up. My shoulder is staying on the ground. Now when I say the rib cage coming up, it's not coming up in a back bend. It's coming up in a rotation, right? So the shoulder girdle is staying on the ground, right? You'll see a bit of a lift, but my shoulder is staying on the ground. So is my blade, yeah? And now I'm going to go towards the camera. Ankle stays on the knee. So the leg and the pelvis, this orientation, this is staying exactly as it is as we do the movement one way, and then as we do the movement the other way. Yeah. Now here, if you want to really amp this up in terms of awareness and control, then don't use the hip flexors. Like if your leg bone is staying exactly in that position of the hip socket, your hip flexors won't contract. I remember when I first discovered this when I was doing a practice one day a number of years ago, and it was like, this is going to sound so funny. It was like freedom was born within when I started being able to do this movement of twisting, and these guys in the front weren't contracting. It was totally cool. And it changed my running. That was what was very interesting. All of a sudden, when I was able to do this movement, for me, my running cadence picked up. So any of you runners out there, that might not happen for you, but it might just plant a seed of kind of some fun. Yeah? All right, so we're here. We're going to take that hand onto the knee, just press a little bit again, and then rotate. I think, if I come back to the fun thing, I think a reason why this process is not fun is because a lot of people in medicine and rehab focus in on improving range of motion and improving strength. And yet evidence actually shows that those two measures do not correlate to a reduction in pain. Isn't that funny? And yet, so much of the focus, ankle comes onto the knee, so much of the focus is let's increase strength and let's increase your range of motion. But yet, those do not correlate to a reduction of pain. So that's why I don't tend to focus on them. I focus on moving better because to me, in my world, what I see with my clientele is their pain goes down really, really quickly when I help them retrain movement patterns. They first become aware and then they start to integrate. And what's interesting is out of moving better, their neuromuscular coordinating patterns, they're better, and strength happens naturally. Range of motion happens naturally. So I'm not attempting to increase strength and range of motion to reduce pain. I'm helping you move better so that you reduce pain. And a byproduct of that, which is pretty awesome, is you become stronger and your range of motion improves. But that's the distinction. I think so many people are focusing on improving strength and range of motion. They are improving it, but their pain's not going down. And how bloody fun is that? It's like not at all one iota. Who wants to get improvements of strength and range and not have improvements of pain? I mean, some people, yes, because you at least get out in life and are able to do more. But holy crap. Holy crap. How about we actually reduce pain? Like, how about? I'm on a tear this morning. My goodness. Okay, so let me come off. All right, let's come back to this leg bone motion in the pelvis here. Yeah? Who knew I could spew such passion at 5:30 in the morning? All right, now just notice if there's anything different as you take your legs wide, right? And just be attentive to the leg. Now, some of you might be saying, what on earth is the point of this? To pay attention. That's the point. Pay attention to your legs and your pelvis. It's the baby step toward the bigger movement. You can bust out half moon if you want. Go for it if you want. But let me tell you, if you get these underlying coordinating patterns sorted out, you won't have to bust out anything. You'll just do it naturally. And I'll tell you a story as we roll about Anne, who was doing all this stuff. She was telling me the story. Or no, it wasn't her. Was it her? Or was it a student of hers? And she was teaching her all these small movements. And that she was working at a studio where they had fab abs class. Seriously, fab abs. And she went to the class and she had been taking all this therapeutic small movement stuff. And she was one of the people who did the class really, really well. And everyone in the class was saying, how are you doing all these movements so well? And she's like, therapeutic yoga. It's because she actually had the range to do it. Yeah? Okay, hand comes onto the roller now. Right? And it wasn't that she was improving range, she was improving the coordinating patterns so that when it got to the complicated movement, she had the attention, the awareness, and the clued inness about it all that she could actually do it. It makes the whole process of getting stronger and more functional a hell of a lot more easier. Okay, so here, what I want you to notice here is I'm not dropping to the floor. I'm really focusing in on rotation, yeah? Now, why is this important for half moon? Because even though when you do half moon, as you're going to learn next week, the pelvis moves on the leg bone when you do it, but I want you to clue into what happens here to your pelvis. I want you to actually have this movement of pelvis rotating on pelvis rotating on pelvis. Go for that. Of rib cage rotating relative to pelvis. I want you to know and feel that so that when you do half moon and you feel yourself compensating by rotating instead, like rotating through here instead of your pelvis on your leg, I want you to be able to feel that. So I'm training you here so you recognize this pattern. And while we're moving this pattern in a good way here, you can use this pattern in a compensated way in another movement. I hope I made sense saying that. Let me say that one more time. You might be like, I move relatively well, yeah? And there's complicated movements that I'm still working on. And then I use these areas that I move well in to compensate for the areas that I don't move well in when I do those complicated movements. So even though this movement pattern you're growing and you might be able to do it really well, chances are if you don't do half moon super well, you'll use this pattern to do half moon. So what was actually a really good pattern in one realm then becomes a compensation in another realm. And it's recognizing when you do that. Yeah. So you need to be conscientious and attentive to the movement that you're doing well when it's a movement that you're doing well, and when you're doing it as a compensation. Yeah. Okay. So it's just kind of cluing in to the various ways that you move. Okay. So we're just going to do this a few more times and then we'll switch to the other side. Good. All right. So it's super fun working with high performing athletes. You can imagine, right? Because they've already got the physiology and the mindset to be super successful in their activity of choice. When they start to figure this piece out, oh man, what they're able to generate is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So again, don't just go where I go. Really pay attention. Like initially you might feel a bit like you need WD-40. It might feel a bit like yeah? Like the next one might feel like that for you, we do, which is this. You're going to come sitting here like this. If you need something underneath your pelvis to help keep your pelvis level, then please grab that. The roller is going to be here. Let me come over here a bit. Roller's here. We're going to twist, much like we just did. Bring the hands onto the roller, and then we're going to move. Okay, so what I don't want you to do is this. I want you to think of it like almost like a side bend, but your pelvis is not coming off. I want you to keep this. Where did my pelvis go? I want you to keep this side of your pelvis. I want you to keep it level, right? You're going to twist above here, and this pelvis is going to stay where it is, okay? So feel for your sitting bone on this side, and now move. That sitting bone is not coming off. If you come off, it's like this, and sure, you go further, but what does that give you, right? Going further, what does it really, really give you? And then you get to notice the thinking that comes up around that, which becomes very, very, very powerful. I remember teaching very early in my career. I remember teaching a woman who was doing something similar to this movement, and she did this. Let's just say this was the movement. She went this far, paused, and then she kept going. She came back, and I said, how was that? Because it looked into my eye at that time. I'm like, it looks pretty good. She's like, my God, that felt awful. I'm in so much pain. I'm like, oh, interesting. So what happened when you got to here and you paused and then you went further? And she's like, well, I went this far and I just felt like I should go further. I didn't really go far. I need to go further. And so then I went further. I'm like, okay. So now notice when you go this far, and this is as far as you go, now notice the thinking. Now come back. So what happened, and this was so formative for me in my early years of teaching, is notice that thinking. So for her, whenever she had the thought of, I should really go further, that's when she stopped. That was her stopping point. Because when she moved in the range, in that range, that's when she got better. Yeah? So notice the thinking. Oh, this isn't enough. Oh, I'm never going to get better. Oh, this is too small. Oh my God, there's got to be more. Like whatever that thinking is, notice it, because that's very important information. Don't push that aside. Our thinking, the feeling in our body, the actual movement of our body, all of it's related. Yeah? So yeah, this one you might kind of feel like this. You might definitely feel like you need some WD-40. So just be super easy. Okay, lovely. So now let's just do one little test to see where you're at here. Come back onto the floor. Bring the leg up, rotate it, take the ankle onto the knee. And just notice, are you more supple through that leg bone? You might not be, but just notice if you are. And just see if things are quieter.
So there might be a piece of this, like you might not feel more supple through the hip, but your upper body might feel more at ease, right? Your jaw might be more relaxed, or something is just a little bit easier about it. There couldn't be nothing that's different. What I want you to notice though overall is what is or is not different, and be aware of that. Yeah? So I'm not desperate for you to feel a change, but I am interested in what you do feel, period. Right? And whether something is positive in feeling or negative in feeling, to me it's all feeling. It's all important. Right? None of it is worse or better than the other. Okay? Right, legs come out straight. Let me come over here. Legs come out straight. One knee comes to your belly. That's the leg across the body. Shoulder girdle stays on the ground as we bring that leg across. And then coming on back. And leg comes up. Nice. Okay, lovely. And then comes on back. You can sit right here or lay right here and just feel what you feel. You might feel really energized through your body, and now you want to do a bit of a different practice, or maybe you want to get out and be active, or you're ready to go eat a meal or whatever. Just take the awareness that you gained into whatever practice you're doing next. Or maybe you're going to sleep, so then take it into your sleeping. But I'd love to know what you noticed in the movement of your leg bones and your pelvis and your rib cage, how all of these pieces here are connected. Maybe you noticed something further up the chain. Maybe you noticed something further down the chain. Just notice what you noticed. That's the first step towards doing a half moon that is functional and strong and all the things you want out of that position. You've got to have the understanding of how these parts of your body move before you even get there. All right, I'm going to be rolling over. But I want you to stay here for as long as you need. Enjoy whatever you do next, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Mwah. Take good care.